Theron Vane, Duke of Blackmoor, woke to the scent of rain and roses. Neither belonged in his bedchamber. He opened his eyes slowly, the gray light of dawn filtering through heavy curtains. His head ached from the laudanum he'd taken the night before, a remedy for the headaches that plagued him after long rides. But the ache vanished the moment he turned his head and saw her. A woman lay in the chair beside his bed. She was young, perhaps 23 or 24, with dark auburn hair that fell in tangled waves across her shoulders. Her skin was pale, her lips cracked, and a bruise bloomed purple and black along her left temple. She wore a man's shirt, white linen far too large for her frame. His shirt. Theron sat up, his hand instinctively reaching for the knife he kept beneath his pillow. The woman didn't stir. Her breathing was shallow, labored, her fingers twitching against the armrest as though fighting some invisible enemy. He didn't know her face. He didn't know her name. And he had absolutely no idea how she'd ended up in his private chambers wearing his clothing. The door opened. Mrs. Pemberton, his housekeeper of 15 years, entered carrying a basin of water and fresh linens. She stopped when she saw him awake. "Your Grace." Her voice was calm, as though finding unconscious women in the Duke's bedroom was perfectly ordinary. "I was about to wake you." "Who is she?" "We don't know. The groundskeeper found her at the main gate around midnight, collapsed in the mud. She'd walked through the storm. Your Grace." Miles, from the look of her boots. They were worn through to nothing. Theron looked at the woman again. Walked through the storm. The tempest last night had been brutal, the kind that drowned roads and swallowed travelers whole. "Why is she in my chambers?" "She developed a fever an hour after we brought her inside. She was delirious, fighting us, screaming about someone trying to kill her." Mrs. Pemberton set down the basin. "She escaped from the guest room twice. Both times she came here, to this room, as though she knew where she was going." "That's impossible. I've never seen her before." "I know, Your Grace, but she kept saying a name. Over and over." Mrs. Pemberton hesitated. "Blackmoor. She kept saying Blackmoor will help. Blackmoor will believe me." The words sent ice down Theron's spine. He rose from the bed, crossing to the chair where the woman lay. Up close, he could see more details. The scratches on her arms, defensive wounds from branches or thorns. The rope burns around her wrists, raw and angry. The way she clutched something in her right hand even in unconsciousness. Gently, he pried her fingers open. A ring. Gold, with a crest he recognized instantly, the Croft family seal. Theron's blood went cold. The Crofts. Lord Aldrich Croft and his son Hadrian, two of the most powerful men in the Eastern Territories. Publicly, they were respected philanthropists, patrons of hospitals and orphanages, beloved by society. Privately, Theron knew them to be something else entirely. Thieves, forgers, murderers who hid their crimes behind charity and charm. 5 years ago, the Crofts had stolen Ashworth Manor from Theron's family. His uncle had died suddenly, and within weeks, a new will had surfaced, leaving everything to Lord Croft. Theron had fought the claim for 2 years, but the documents were flawless, the witnesses unimpeachable. He'd lost. Not because the Crofts were innocent, but because he couldn't prove they were guilty. And now, a woman wearing a Croft ring had appeared at his gates, battered and terrified, claiming Blackmoor would believe her. Believe her about what? The woman's eyes fluttered open. They were green, the color of deep forest moss, and filled with absolute terror. "No," she whispered, her voice cracked and raw. "Please, don't send me back. Don't let him find me." "Who?" Theron knelt beside the chair, keeping his voice low, steady. "Who are you running from?" Her hand shot out, gripping his wrist with surprising strength. Her eyes locked onto his, desperate and wild. "Hadrian Croft," she breathed. He tried to kill me. He threw me from Ashworth Cliff because I found the truth. Her grip tightened. And if he learns I survived, he'll come for me again. She passed out before Theron could ask his next question. But it didn't matter. She'd said Ashworth, the estate the Crofts had stolen from his family. And she'd said she found the truth. Theron looked at the ring in his palm, then at the broken woman in his chair. He didn't know who she was. He didn't know what truth she'd found. But he intended to discover both before the day was done. The physician arrived within the hour. Dr. Whitcomb was a quiet man with steady hands and no patience for questions. He examined the woman thoroughly while Theron waited in the corridor, pacing like a caged animal. 3 cracked ribs, the doctor reported when he emerged. A dislocated shoulder, which I've reset. Lacerations consistent with a fall from significant height, likely into brambles or rough terrain. Rope burns suggest she was restrained before she escaped. He paused. Whoever did this wanted her dead, Your Grace. The fact that she walked miles through that storm with these injuries is nothing short of miraculous. Will she recover? If the fever breaks within 2 days, yes. If not. Dr. Whitcomb shook his head. I've done what I can. The rest is between her and God. After the doctor left, Theron returned to the bedchamber. Mrs. Pemberton had moved the woman to the bed, changed her into a proper nightgown, and cleaned the worst of the mud and blood from her hair. She looked younger now, more vulnerable, and somehow familiar. Theron studied her face, searching for recognition. The curve of her jaw, the slight upturn of her nose, the way her brow furrowed even in sleep, as though she were solving problems in her dreams. Then it struck him. He'd seen her portrait. 2 years ago, in the London papers. Miss Elowen Fairfax, betrothed to Lord Hadrian Croft. A match of modest fortune and exceptional beauty, certain to be the wedding of the season. He remembered the announcement because he'd felt sorry for her. Any woman marrying into the Croft family was walking into a gilded cage with poison locks. But the wedding had never happened. The engagement had been quietly dissolved 3 months after the announcement. Society whispered that Miss Fairfax had suffered a nervous collapse and been sent to the countryside to recover. No one had seen her since. Until now. Until she'd appeared at his gates, wearing Hadrian's ring, claiming he'd tried to murder her. Theron pulled a chair beside the bed and sat down to wait. She woke again near sunset. This time, her eyes were clearer, the fever having broken sometime during the afternoon. She looked around the room slowly, taking in the dark wood paneling, the heavy curtains, and the fire crackling in the hearth. Then she looked at Theron. "You're the Duke of Blackmore," she said. Not a question. "I am. I know your face from the papers. They say you're the Crofts' greatest enemy. They say many things. Most are true." She pushed herself up against the pillows, wincing at the pain. "Then you're exactly who I need." "And who are you, Miss Fairfax?" Surprise flickered across her face. "You know my name. I remember your engagement announcement. I also remember it was dissolved under mysterious circumstances." Theron leaned forward. What really happened? She was quiet for a long moment. Then she laughed. A broken, bitter sound. "What happened? I discovered that the man I was supposed to marry is a monster. That his entire family fortune is built on stolen estates and forged documents. That they've been systematically murdering people for decades and making it look like natural deaths." Her voice hardened. "And when I threatened to expose them, Hadrian threw me off a cliff and left me for dead." Theron didn't react visibly. He'd learned long ago to keep his face still when his mind was racing. But inside, his heart was pounding. Forged documents, stolen estates, systematic murder. Everything he'd suspected for 5 years, confirmed by a woman who'd seen the proof firsthand. "Tell me everything," he said quietly. Elowen closed her eyes, her hands trembling in her lap. 3 weeks ago, I was at Croft Hall for a dinner party. Hadrian and I were to announce our wedding date. I was looking for him in the East Wing when I took a wrong turn and found his father's private study. Which is always locked. It was open that night. Just a crack. I don't know why. She opened her eyes. I should have walked away. But something made me look inside. What did you find? A cabinet. Full of ledgers, correspondence, legal documents. Her voice dropped. I only had a few minutes. But what I saw? Lord Croft keeps records of every crime they've committed. Every estate they've stolen. Every death they've arranged. He writes it all down like a merchant keeping inventory. Theron's jaw tightened. Why would he keep such records? Insurance, I think. Against his own partners, his own family. If anyone ever betrays him, he can destroy them too. Elowin met his gaze. Your family's estate was in there. Ashworth Manor. I saw the original will, the real one, signed by your uncle. And I saw the forgery they used to steal it from you. The words hit Theron like a physical blow. For 5 years he'd fought for proof. For 5 years he'd been told the Croft documents were legitimate, that his suspicions were grief and delusion. And now this woman was telling him the evidence existed, that it was sitting in Lord Croft's study, waiting to be found. Did you take anything? He asked. I couldn't. Hadrian came looking for me. I barely made it out of the study before he found me. She touched the bruise on her temple. But I made a mistake. I confronted him that night, demanded he make things right before I would marry him. I thought, you thought he'd listen to reason. I thought he loved me. Her laugh was hollow. He smiled, that charming smile I'd fallen in love with, and he said, You're very brave, Elowin, and very foolish. Theron recognized the pattern. The Crofts didn't argue, they eliminated. He waited 3 days, Elowin continued. Then he suggested a walk along the cliffs, a romantic gesture before the wedding. Her hands clenched. We were halfway up Ashworth Cliff when he grabbed me, told me I should have kept quiet, that he would have given me a good life if I'd just played my role. And then? He pushed me, over the edge. Her voice cracked. I don't know how I survived. There was a ledge, hidden by the rocks. I landed there instead of the water. When I woke, it was dark, and I could hear him above me, searching. He couldn't see me in the shadows, so he assumed I'd fallen all the way. He left you there. He left me there to die. But I didn't. Steel crept into her voice. I climbed down. I walked until I found a road. I stole a horse from a farm, rode until the horse collapsed, then walked some more. She looked at him. I came here because the papers say you hate the Crofts. Because I thought you'd be the one person in England who might believe me. Theron was silent for a long moment. Then he stood and walked to the window, looking out at the grounds of Blackmore Hall. The estate had been in his family for 400 years. It had survived wars, rebellions, and a dozen attempts by rivals to claim it. But Ashworth Manor was gone, stolen by thieves who smiled at charity balls and murdered behind closed doors. Until now. If I help you, he said slowly, what do you want in return? I want justice. For myself. For your family. For everyone the Crofts have destroyed. Elowin's voice strengthened. And I want Hadrian to know I survived. I want him to see me standing in a courtroom when his family's empire crumbles. Theron turned to face her. You understand what you're asking. The Crofts have powerful friends. They'll destroy your reputation, call you a madwoman, a scorned bride inventing lies. Let them try. They might try to kill you again. Then protect me. She met his gaze without flinching. Marry me. The word hung in the air between them. Marry you, Theron repeated. As your wife, I become untouchable. A duchess, beyond their reach. They can't discredit me without discrediting you, and no one would believe the Duke of Blackmore married a madwoman. She lifted her chin. I'm not asking for love. I'm asking for an alliance. You get the evidence you need to reclaim Ashworth and destroy the Crofts. I get protection and the chance to fight back. It was calculating. It was strategic. It was exactly the kind of proposal Theron would have made himself. He studied her for a long moment. This woman who'd been thrown from a cliff and walked through a storm to reach him. Who'd survived what should have killed her. Who was sitting in his bed with broken ribs and a dislocated shoulder, negotiating terms like a general planning a war. One condition, he said finally. Name it. We don't just destroy them. We expose every crime, return every stolen estate, give justice to every family they've harmed. His voice was ice. Not just revenge, justice. Elowyn extended her hand. Agreed. Theron crossed the room and took it. Her grip was stronger than he expected. Then welcome to Blackmore, Miss Fairfax. His mouth curved. We have a war to win. 3 weeks passed before Elowyn could walk without pain. During that time, Theron became her shadow. He visited her chambers each morning to discuss strategy, each afternoon to share intelligence about the Crofts, and each evening to dine together in the small parlor adjacent to her rooms. He was never warm, never familiar, but always present. She learned quickly that the Duke of Blackmore was a man of systems. The Crofts have spies everywhere, he explained one morning, spreading a map across her bed. Servants, merchants, even magistrates on their payroll. If we move against them openly, they'll know within hours. So we move quietly. We move strategically. He traced a line on the map. My solicitor has been building a case against them for years. What he lacks is evidence, testimony, proof that can't be dismissed as hearsay. The ledgers in Lord Croft's study? Exactly, but we can't simply steal them. We need to expose the Crofts publicly, in a setting where they can't control the narrative. Theron looked at her. That means society. Balls, dinners, house parties. You'll need to move among them as my Duchess, above suspicion, beyond reproach. I was raised to be a gentleman's wife, not a duchess. Then you'll learn. And learn she did. Mrs. Pemberton became her instructor in household management. A retired dancing master was summoned from London to refine her steps. A seamstress arrived with fabrics and fashion plates, transforming Elowyn from a battered survivor into someone who looked like she belonged at Blackmore Hall. But it was Theron who taught her the most important lessons. Society is a battlefield, he said during one of their evening sessions. Every conversation is a negotiation. Every smile is a weapon. The Crofts have mastered this game. You must master it better. And if I fail? You won't. His voice was certain. You survived what should have killed you. You walked through a storm with broken ribs. Social warfare will be considerably less painful. She laughed despite herself. Is that supposed to be encouraging? It's supposed to be true. Day by day, Elowyn transformed. She memorized the names and scandals of every noble family in England. She practiced deflecting intrusive questions with graceful non-answers. She learned which topics were acceptable, which were dangerous, and which could be weaponized against enemies. But more than skills, she gained something else. Confidence. The woman who'd arrived at Blackmore's gates, broken and terrified, began to fade. In her place emerged someone harder, sharper, and more determined. Someone who could fight. I don't want to be just a witness, she told Theron one night. I don't want to simply testify and let others handle the rest. What do you want? To be your partner, to help plan, strategize, act. She held his gaze. Hadrian threw me away because he thought I was weak. I want to prove him wrong. Theron studied her for a long moment. She expected him to refuse, to remind her that she was injured, inexperienced, a liability. Instead, he nodded slowly. Then we worked together. Every decision, every move. He extended his hand. Equal partners. She shook it, feeling something shift between them. Not romance. Not yet. But respect. And that, perhaps, was more valuable. The first test came sooner than expected. Lord Whitmore, a neighboring baron with loose lips and extensive connections, had invited himself to Blackmore Hall for tea. He arrived with his wife, Lady Whitmore, a sharp-eyed woman known for collecting gossip like other women collected jewelry. "This is reconnaissance," Theron warned Elowyn that morning. "Whitmore is friendly with the Crofts. Whatever he sees here, they'll know within the week. Then we give him something to report." "Exactly. But nothing true. Nothing useful." He adjusted his cufflinks. "Can you do this?" Elowyn thought of Hadrian's face as he pushed her. Thought of the cold water waiting below. Thought of every lie she'd believed because she wanted love more than truth. "Watch me." The tea was held in Blackmore's formal drawing room, a space designed to intimidate visitors with its ancient tapestries and towering ceilings. Elowyn wore deep blue silk, sapphires borrowed from the family collection glittering at her throat. Lady Whitmore's eyes swept over her immediately, cataloging every detail. "What a surprise this marriage was," Lady Whitmore said, accepting her teacup. "No one even knew the Duke was courting." "Some things are better kept private," Elowyn replied smoothly. "Wouldn't you agree?" "Oh, certainly. Though one does wonder—" Lady Whitmore tilted her head. "You seem familiar somehow. Have we met before?" The question was a trap. Elowyn recognized it instantly. "I doubt it. I spent most of my years in Hampshire, far from London society." "Hampshire? How quaint." Lady Whitmore's smile sharpened. "I could have sworn you reminded me of someone, a young woman who was engaged to Lord Hadrian Croft some time ago. But that poor creature had some sort of breakdown, I believe. Vanished completely." The room seemed to hold its breath. Elowyn felt Theron's attention on her, testing, measuring. This was the moment. Show weakness, and Lady Whitmore would smell blood. "How tragic for her," Elowyn said calmly, "though I understand Lord Croft can be difficult. Perhaps the breakdown was a blessing in disguise." Lady Whitmore's eyes widened slightly. "You know Lord Croft?" "Only by reputation." Elowyn sipped her tea. "And reputation, as we know, is often more revealing than personal acquaintance." The implication hung in the air. Lady Whitmore glanced at her husband, uncertain how to proceed. The conversation shifted to safer topics after that. When the Whitmores finally departed, Elowyn allowed herself to exhale. "Well?" she asked Theron. "You implied the Crofts have secrets without making a direct accusation. You deflected suspicion while planting doubt." The ghost of a smile crossed his face. "Lady Whitmore will spend the next week wondering what you meant." "Is that good?" "That's excellent. The best rumors are the ones people invent themselves." Elowyn felt warmth spread through her chest, not from the compliment but from the realization that she'd done it. She'd stepped onto the battlefield and held her ground. "The Crofts will hear about this," she said. "Yes, they'll know you're alive, that you're at Blackmore, that you're not afraid of them." Theron's expression hardened. "Which means the real war begins now." The night before they were to leave for London, Elowyn couldn't sleep. She wandered Blackmore Hall's corridors until she found herself in the library, a vast room lined with books that stretched toward the ceiling. A fire burned low in the hearth, and in its glow, she discovered she wasn't alone. Theron sat in a leather chair, a glass of whiskey in his hand, staring at the flames. "Can't sleep either?" she asked. "I never sleep well before battles." He gestured to the chair opposite. "Join me?" She sat, tucking her feet beneath her. The fire crackled between them, filling the silence. "Can I ask you something?" she said finally. "You can ask. I may not answer." "Why do you hate the Crofts so much? Beyond Ashworth? Beyond the forgery? There's something personal, isn't there? Theron was quiet for so long she thought he wouldn't respond. My mother, he said finally. She died when I was 12. The physicians called it a sudden illness, but I always suspected something else. He took a slow breath. She'd discovered something about Lord Croft. Something damaging. She was preparing to expose him. And then, quite suddenly, she was dead. You think they killed her? I know they did. I just can't prove it. His jaw tightened. My uncle inherited her evidence, whatever it was. He continued her work quietly for years. And then he died too, and everything he'd gathered disappeared along with Ashworth Manor. Alawan felt her heart ache for him. 12 years old, losing his mother. Decades spent fighting an enemy he couldn't touch. We'll prove it, she said softly. Together. We'll find the evidence and make them pay for everything. Theron looked at her then. Really looked. And something shifted in his expression. You're not what I expected, he admitted. What did you expect? Someone broken. Someone who needed saving. He shook his head. Instead, I found someone who saved herself, and then demanded to join the fight. Does that bother you? No. His voice dropped. It terrifies me. Why? He didn't answer immediately. When he did, his words were careful, measured. Because I'm beginning to care what happens to you. Not as an ally, not as a strategic asset. He met her eyes. As something more. The admission hung between them like smoke. Eloan's pulse quickened. She should say something sensible. Something about maintaining boundaries, keeping their arrangement professional. Instead, she said, I'm beginning to care too. Neither moved. Neither touched. But something fundamental had changed, a wall crumbling that couldn't be rebuilt. London will be dangerous, Theron said quietly. I know. Stay close to me. I will. He raised his glass slightly. To the war ahead. She had no glass, so she simply nodded. To the war ahead. But as she returned to her chambers that night, Alawan realized the most dangerous war might not be against the Crofts at all. It might be against her own heart. London in spring was a riot of carriages, calling cards, and calculated cruelty. The Duchess of Blackmore made her debut at Lady Pembroke's annual ball, an event so exclusive that invitations were rumored to cause duels among those who didn't receive them. Alawan descended the grand staircase on Theron's arm, wearing ivory silk embroidered with silver thread. Diamonds cascaded from her throat, her ears, and her wrists. Every piece was from the Blackmore collection, centuries of wealth displayed on a woman society had never seen before. The whispers started immediately. Who is she? Where did she come from? How did Blackmore find her? Smile, Theron murmured. You're a duchess, not a prisoner. I feel like both. That's London. You'll adjust. They moved through the ballroom like ships navigating treacherous waters. Alawan met lords and ladies whose names she'd memorized, deflected questions about her family with practiced grace, and accepted compliments with appropriate modesty. She was performing flawlessly. Then she saw him. Hadrian Croft stood near the refreshment table, a glass of champagne in his hand, laughing at something a young debutante had said. He looked exactly as Eloan remembered. Golden hair, easy smile, the kind of beauty that made women forget to be cautious. The kind of beauty that hid a monster. As though sensing her gaze, Hadrian turned. Their eyes met. The champagne glass slipped from his fingers, shattering on the marble floor. The sound cut through the music, drawing every eye in the room. Hadrian? The debutante touched his arm. Are you well? He didn't answer. He was staring at Eloan with an expression she recognized. Shock, disbelief, and beneath it all, fear. Good, she thought. Be afraid. Theron's hand tightened on her arm. Steady. I'm steady. He's coming this way. Indeed, Hadrian had recovered enough to cross the ballroom, his charm reassembling itself with every step. By the time he reached them, his smile was firmly in place. "Your Grace," he said to Theron, his voice smooth as silk. "What an unexpected pleasure." "Lord Croft." Theron's tone could have frozen wine. "I don't believe you've met my wife." Hadrian turned to Elowin, and for a moment, his mask slipped. She saw the calculation behind his eyes, the rapid reassessment of every plan he'd made. "Your wife," he repeated. "How extraordinary. I could have sworn we'd met before." "Have we?" Elowin kept her voice light. "I'm afraid I don't recall." "No? Perhaps I'm mistaken." His smile sharpened. "You simply remind me of someone I once knew. A woman who disappeared quite suddenly. Tragic, really. How unfortunate for her." "Indeed. Though some say she brought her troubles upon herself." Hadrian leaned closer, dropping his voice. "Curiosity can be so dangerous, don't you think?" "I think," Elowin replied, "that the truth has a way of surfacing, no matter how deep some people try to bury it." The threat hung between them, invisible to everyone else but unmistakable to them both. Lady Pembroke appeared, breaking the tension. "Your Grace, I simply must introduce you to the Countess of Harrington. She's dying to meet the mysterious new Duchess." Elowin allowed herself to be led away, but she felt Hadrian's eyes on her back the entire time. He knew she was alive, that she was at Blackmoor, that she was beyond his reach, and he was terrified. Later that night, in the carriage home, Theron broke the silence. "He'll move quickly now. He can't afford to wait." "I know." "Are you frightened?" Elowin thought about it. The fear was there, certainly, lurking beneath the surface. But stronger than fear was something else. Anticipation. "No," she said. "I'm ready." They had been in London for a week when the attack came. Not against Elowin directly, but against something far more vulnerable. A letter arrived at Blackmoor House, their London residence, addressed to the Duchess in elegant script. Inside was a single page and a lock of dark hair. "Your younger sister has such lovely curls. It would be a shame if something happened to her. Perhaps you should reconsider your accusations before anyone else gets hurt." Elowin's hands shook as she read the words. Marguerite, her 14-year-old sister, living with their aunt in Cornwall. Sweet, innocent Marguerite, who knew nothing of Elowin's marriage, her survival, or the war she'd declared against the Crofts. Theron found her in the study, the letter crumpled in her fist. "What happened?" She showed him. Watched his expression harden into something dangerous. "They've taken her?" "Not yet. This is a warning." Elowin's voice cracked. "They're telling me to stop. To disappear. To let them win." "And will you?" "I can't." Tears burned her eyes. "But I can't let them hurt Marguerite either. She's just a child, Theron. She has nothing to do with this." Theron took the letter from her hands, reading it again. Then he crossed to his desk and began writing rapidly. "What are you doing?" "I have men in Cornwall. Former soldiers. Loyal to my family for generations." He sealed the letter and rang for a servant. "Within 2 days, your sister and aunt will be here, under my protection. The Crofts won't touch them." "You can't possibly arrange that so quickly." "Watch me." He handed the letter to the servant with rapid instructions, then turned back to Elowin. "This is what they do. They find weakness, exploit it, and make you feel helpless. But you're not helpless anymore. You have resources. You have allies." He crossed to her, taking her hands. "You have me." "Why?" The question escaped before she could stop it. "Why are you doing all this? It's not just about Ashworth anymore, is it?" Theron was quiet for a moment. "No," he admitted. "It stopped being about Ashworth the night you told me you wanted to be my partner, not my witness." His thumb traced circles on her palm. "I've spent 20 years fighting the Crofts alone, losing alone. And then you appeared, half dead and completely fearless, and suddenly I wasn't alone anymore. Theron, I won't let them hurt you. Or anyone you love. His voice was fierce. Whatever it costs, whatever it takes. She believed him. That was the terrifying part. 3 days later, Marguerite and Aunt Honoria arrived at Blackmore House, confused, but safe. Elowyn held her sister so tightly that Marguerite laughed and complained she couldn't breathe. "Why are we here?" Marguerite asked. "What's happening?" "I'll explain everything," Elowyn promised. "But for now, just know that you're safe. And you're going to stay safe." That night, Theron found her in the library again. "Your family is secured. The Crofts can't use them against you anymore." "Thank you." The words felt inadequate. "I don't know how to repay you." "You can repay me by helping me destroy them." He sat beside her. "Lord Ashford is hosting a house party next week at Ashford Hall. All of London society will attend, including Lord Croft and Hadrian. It's our best opportunity to expose them publicly." "How?" "I have a contact inside Croft Hall, a servant willing to retrieve the ledgers in exchange for safe passage out of the country." Theron's eyes gleamed. "By the time we arrive at Ashford's party, we'll have the evidence we need. And if something goes wrong, then we improvise." He took her hand. "Together." Elowyn looked at their joined hands, then at his face. "When this is over," she said quietly, "what happens to us?" "What do you want to happen?" She didn't have an answer. Or rather, she had one but was afraid to speak it. "Let's survive first," she said instead. "Then we'll figure out the rest." The night before they left for Ashford Hall, Elowyn found herself on the balcony of Blackmore House, watching the London fog roll through the streets below. She heard Theron's footsteps before she saw him. "You should be resting," he said, joining her at the railing. "So should you." "I don't rest well before battles. You know that." She did know. She'd learned so many things about him over the past weeks. The way he took his tea. The books he read late at night. The way his jaw tightened when he was worried but didn't want to show it. "Are you afraid?" she asked. "Terrified." He said it simply, without shame. Not of the Crofts. Not of what might happen tomorrow. But of what? He turned to face her, and in the moonlight his expression was open in a way she'd never seen before. "Of losing you. Of finally having something worth protecting and watching it slip away." He reached out, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. "I've spent my life building walls, Elowyn, keeping everyone at a distance because it was safer. And then you crashed through every single one. I didn't mean to. I know. That's what makes it terrifying." His hand lingered on her cheek. "I don't know how to do this. I don't know how to love someone and fight a war at the same time." "Love?" Her voice was barely a whisper. "Yes." He stepped closer. "I love you. I didn't plan it. I certainly didn't want it. But it's true, and I'm tired of pretending otherwise." Elowyn's heart was pounding so hard she was certain he could hear it. "I love you too," she said. "I think I have since the night you told me about your mother. Since you trusted me with your pain." "Then we're both fools. The very best kind." He kissed her. Not gently, not carefully, but with all the desperation and longing of two people who'd found each other against impossible odds. His hands cradled her face, her fingers gripped his coat, and for one perfect moment, there was no war, no Crofts, no danger, just them. When they finally pulled apart, both breathless, Elowyn laughed. "What?" Theron asked. "I nearly died at Hadrian's hands, walked through a storm, and somehow survived. And all of that led me here. To you. Fate has a peculiar sense of humor. Or perhaps fate knew exactly what it was doing." He kissed her forehead, gentle this time. "Whatever happens tomorrow, know this. You are the best thing that ever walked through my gates. Even covered in mud and wearing your shirt? Especially then." He smiled, and it transformed his entire face. "Now come inside. Tomorrow, we end this." Hand in hand, they returned to the warmth of the house. Whatever came next, they would face it together. Ashford Hall glittered like a jewel box. 300 guests filled its ballrooms and gardens. The cream of English society gathered for what promised to be the event of the season. Crystal chandeliers cast dancing light across silk gowns and polished metals. An orchestra played waltzes that masked 1,000 whispered conversations, and in the center of it all stood Elowyn, Duchess of Blackmore, waiting for war. Theron had received word that morning. The ledgers were secured. His contact had delivered them to a solicitor in London, who was at this very moment preparing copies for the magistrate. All that remained was the confrontation. "They're here," Theron murmured, nodding toward the entrance. Lord Aldrich Croft entered first, silver-haired and distinguished, the picture of aristocratic dignity. Lady Croft followed, draped in emeralds. And behind them came Hadrian, his smile firmly in place, his eyes scanning the room. When his gaze found Elowyn, the smile flickered. "Remember the plan," Theron said. "We let them make the first move. Let them expose themselves. And if they don't, they will. Lord Croft can't resist a confrontation when he thinks he's winning." As if on cue, Lord Croft began making his way toward them, parting the crowd like a ship through water. "Your Grace," he said to Theron, his voice carrying, "how delightful to see you here. And your lovely wife, of course." His eyes swept over Elowyn with barely concealed malice. "I understand there have been some interesting rumors circulating about my family." "Have there?" Theron's tone was mild. "I'm afraid I don't pay attention to gossip." "No? Then perhaps you're unaware that your wife has been spreading lies about my son, claiming he tried to harm her in some way." The nearby guests fell silent, sensing blood in the water. "Those aren't lies," Elowyn said clearly. Lord Croft's eyes narrowed. "I beg your pardon?" "I said those aren't lies." She stepped forward, her voice ringing through the ballroom. "Your son tried to murder me because I discovered that your family has been stealing estates and killing innocents for decades." Gasps rippled through the crowd. "This is outrageous," Hadrian sputtered. "She's clearly unstable. A woman scorned, inventing fantasies." "Am I?" Elowyn turned to face the assembled guests. "Then explain the ledgers in your father's study, the ones that detail every forged will, every stolen property, every convenient death." Lord Croft's composure cracked. "There are no such ledgers." "Then you won't mind that they're currently in the hands of the London magistrate." Theron's voice was ice, along with testimony from 3 former servants, a signed confession from your bookkeeper, and documents proving you forged my uncle's will to steal Ashworth Manor. The silence that followed was absolute. Then chaos erupted. Lord Croft lunged toward Theron, fury replacing calculation. "You have no right. I have every right. You murdered my mother. You stole my family's estate. You tried to kill my wife." Theron didn't flinch. "And now everyone in this room knows what you are." "He's lying," Hadrian shouted. "They're both lying." "Then explain this." A new voice cut through the noise. Lady Ashford stepped forward, holding a sheaf of papers. "I received these documents this afternoon from the Duke's solicitor. They detail the theft of my late husband's estate by Lord Croft 15 years ago." Her voice shook with rage. "An estate I was told he'd lost through poor investment. And mine," Lord Thornton called from across the room. "The Brighton properties my father supposedly gambled away." "And mine," another voice added. "And mine." One by one, victims of the Croft family stepped forward, their accusations filling the air like thunder. Years of suspicion, years of whispered doubts, suddenly given voice. Lord Croft's face went gray. Lady Croft clutched her husband's arm, her composure shattered. And Hadrian ran. He made it 3 steps before 2 footmen blocked his path. Magistrates' men in disguise, waiting for exactly this moment. "Hadrian Croft," one of them announced, You are under arrest for attempted murder, fraud, and conspiracy. You can't do this. Hadrian struggled against their grip. Do you know who I am? Yes. Elowen stepped toward him, and for the first time, she allowed herself to smile. You're the man who left me for dead, and now you're going to prison, where you'll have plenty of time to regret it. The footman dragged him away, his protests echoing through the silent ballroom. Lord Croft was arrested moments later. Then Lady Croft. The party had transformed into something else entirely. Justice. Long delayed. Finally delivered. Through it all, Theron stood beside Elowen, their hands intertwined. It's over, she breathed. The Crofts are finished. But this? He lifted their joined hands. This is just beginning. They didn't return to Blackmore House that night. Instead, Theron arranged for a private suite at an inn outside London, away from the chaos and questions that would inevitably follow. Elowen sat by the fire, still in her ball gown, watching the flames dance. The adrenaline was fading, leaving exhaustion and something else in its wake. Relief. Bone-deep, overwhelming relief. Theron knelt before her, taking her hands. How do you feel? I don't know. She laughed shakily. Free, I think. For the first time in months. You were magnificent tonight. Standing up to them in front of everyone, refusing to be silenced. His eyes were soft. I've never been prouder of anyone. I couldn't have done it without you. You could have. You would have found another way. He kissed her knuckles. That's who you are, Elowen. A survivor. A fighter. The bravest woman I've ever known. Tears pricked her eyes. Don't make me cry. I've been strong all night. Then be soft now. You've earned it. She leaned forward, resting her forehead against his. What happens next? The trials, the investigations, the endless paperwork of dismantling a criminal empire. He smiled slightly. It won't be exciting. I don't need exciting. I need... She paused, searching for the right word. I need peace. And home. And you. You have all three. He cupped her face. This marriage started as strategy. A bargain between two people who needed each other. And now? Now it's real. More real than anything I've ever known. His thumb brushed her cheek. I love you, Elowen. Not because you're useful. Not because you're brave. Because you're you. And being with you makes me someone I actually want to be. I love you too. The words came easily now. My cold, strategic Duke, who turned out to have the warmest heart. Don't tell anyone. It'll ruin my reputation. She laughed and kissed him, soft and sweet and full of promise. Take me home, she whispered against his lips. Take me to Blackmore. Always. 6 months later, Elowen stood in the restored gardens of Ashworth Manor. The estate had been returned to the Vane family after the trials concluded. Lord Croft and Hadrian were serving lengthy prison sentences. Lady Croft had fled to the continent, stripped of title and fortune. The families they'd robbed were being compensated from seized assets. Justice, complete and final. But Elowen hadn't come here for justice today. She'd come for something else. The architects say the East Wing will be ready by autumn. Theron joined her on the terrace, slipping an arm around her waist. We can house at least 30 women by winter. The Ashworth Women's Sanctuary. Elowen's vision. Theron's funding. A refuge for women who'd been abandoned, abused, or left with nothing, just as she'd once been. It's perfect, she said softly. It's necessary. He kissed her temple. You're changing lives, you know. Women are already writing to you from across England, asking for help. Then we'll help them. All of them. She turned in his arms. I was discarded once. Abandoned because I was inconvenient. I won't let that happen to anyone else. My extraordinary wife. He smiled, and it still made her heart flutter. Have I mentioned today that I love you? Only 3 times. You're slipping. I love you. There. 4. She laughed, the sound carrying across the gardens. A carriage appeared on the drive and Marguerite tumbled out, followed by Aunt Honoria. The girl had flourished under Blackmore's protection, growing from a shy child into a spirited young woman with opinions about everything. Eloin. Marguerite ran toward them. The village is organizing a celebration for the sanctuary opening. They want you to give a speech. A speech? Eloin groaned. I hate speeches. You face down the crofts in front of 300 people, Theron reminded her. A village celebration should be simple. That was different. I was angry. Then get angry again. He grinned. I'm sure I can say something irritating. She swatted his arm, but she was smiling. Later that evening, after the celebrations had ended and the guests had gone home, Eloin stood on the balcony of Ashworth Manor, looking out at the grounds she'd nearly died trying to expose. Theron joined her, wrapping a blanket around her shoulders. What are you thinking? He asked. I'm thinking about the night you found me, half dead at your gates, wearing your shirt, with no idea that my whole life was about to change. Regrets? Not one. She leaned back against him. I was betrayed by a man who claimed to love me. I should have died. Instead, I found you, found purpose, found home, found a very stubborn duke who doesn't deserve you. Found exactly the duke I needed. She turned to face him. I love you, Theron Vane. Every cold, strategic, secretly tender part of you. And I love you. He kissed her softly. My stranger in a borrowed shirt, who turned out to be my everything. They stood together as the stars emerged, 2 people who'd found each other against impossible odds and built something neither had planned, but both had needed. She'd been left in the cold once, but she'd found warmth that would last forever. Thank you for staying with us until the very end. If this story touched something in you, the fight for justice, the power of being seen, and the strength it takes to survive, I hope you'll share it with someone who needs to hear it. Drop a comment telling us your favorite moment and where you're listening from. If you're ready for another story where love conquers the impossible, subscribe and ring that bell so you never miss the next chapter. You're the reason these stories exist. Thank you for being here, for listening, for believing that even in the coldest moments, love can find a way.